To Hex, and today we have Maddie ALLIN, the creator of Time Pays Me. And yeah, we're looking forward to understanding what's involved in this protocol and how it works in the DeFi space. So yeah,
Do you
big
prefer to be
welcome.
called Maddie ALLIN or Maddie ALLIN?
Either way works.
So yeah, welcome, Maddie.
Thank you.
We started this channel really just a few weeks ago, and we're very excited to have you on. Because you're a big Hex PulseX streamer, and I've been watching. It's kind of, for me, it's feels a little surreal because I've been watching you stream for years now, and to have you on the show is it's
Probably overdue.
It's a moment. It's overdue, and it's a moment. It's a moment for me, and it's
well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. I know it's going to be good.
Awesome. So, tell us, what have you created in Time Pays Me?
I mean, it was a whole journey just working with Future Us, who is the most knowledgeable person I've ever found in the blockchain space. I mean, you got Richard Hart, who knows a lot. You got Steph from Stake Rap, who knows a lot. Like, Future Us definitely knows a lot. And so he and I just basically started our friendship of talking every day about crypto and trying to learn more, me trying to understand more, because he had read every line of the hex code and understood it and had created a front end for it and all that good kind of stuff. And so, we just kind of started off the journey of being fans of Hex and, everything that Hex has always stood for, which is going back to what is true DeFi. It's about self-custody. It's about not having middlemen involved. And, being able to see a short-term picture and a long-term picture all at once. So, so I mean, Time Pays Me has, it's been a total journey for the past year, at least, trying to put together something that, in this case has 3 different features that I'm sure we'll get to. But yeah, I mean, just in the first place, it was definitely a trip to go from recognizing a need for something and then taking it all the way.
And what was that you recognized the need for?
I see time locking Hex as like a superpower, to where if I didn't have all my Hex time locked, I would have sold it too early, and I would have missed out as well on the amazing community that's been built here. I don't know that there's any crypto that's ever been FUDed more than Hex was, especially in the early days. I mean, even what we have now seems pretty high to people, unless you were there from the beginning.
So you wanted to move that ability over to ETH, Pulse, and Pepe, is that right?
Well, yeah, something like that. Yeah, ETH, Pulse, and PulseX are 3 things
PulseX.
that,
I
that I
Pepe
didn't.
in the Twitter thread. Is that wrong? Or
so right now there are 10 or 15 different cryptos that you can time lock on the front end. If you know how to go straight to the blockchain, you can do any ERC or PRC20.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I actually didn't
we included
know that.
Pepe. Yeah,
I actually
Pepe
didn't know that.
Can be locked.
I thought that was just Pulse. So you can actually do like any ERC20.
There are so many Easter eggs and things that people, I mean, because you want to make sure something's working first before you like go out there. And so I guess now is the start of my media tour to like try to really explain this to people. I think I've held off up until this point. But yeah, you can it's designed, it's audited and everything to work with pretty much any ERC or PRC20 token. Now, if you're doing something exotic, let's say with a token that has a buy and sell tax, you know, that's a situation where, yeah, the auditors, they were looking into it. They gave it a seal of approval. But for me, I'm not 100% convinced that like those are good tokens for people to hold long term anyway. So, you know, it's kind of a do your own research thing. But if it makes sense to time lock, then you can definitely do it on Time Pays Me. Even like wrapped Bitcoin, you know?
Interesting.
Mm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So can you take me through the process of what I would do? Let's say I've got some Pulse. Let's go with Pulse because it's nice and easy. Let's say I've got some Pulse. I want to. Does it need to be wrapped Pulse, or is it the native Pulse that we're locking?
Native. Yeah.
Okay.
So the difference between like an ERC20 and like the native asset of ETH is that ETH is coded as a coin and everything else is a token that's based on the ERC20 standard. And so the blockchain code had to be written differently to allow for both. And it was. So yeah. And Pulse being the native asset on Pulse chain, that's what you use to pay for the gas fees. And so that's a definitely something that people like to time lock because you don't have to mess around with other stuff. So the way that you would do it is you would go to timepays.me, the website, and you know, you'd have your MetaMask set up already, and you'd be able to interact with the front end. At that point, there's a spot to be able to choose how many tokens you want to move into the vault, and the vault is a smart contract that you hold yourself. It's a self-custody smart contract. So, you know, if somebody was like super nerdy and they understood like what it means to hold the liquidity position, it's basically you're going to the Uniswap contract and you're issuing yourself a smart contract from what's called a smart contract factory. And so that's the same method that's used to issue yourself a smart vault, which is our invention of a smart contract that you're holding yourself for the purposes of being able to time lock and drip a token or coin back to yourself over time, and also to be able to undo a hack.
I suppose you could also.
Yeah.
I suppose that means you could also sell it, couldn't you?
Well, we put a lot of game theory into making sure that it wouldn't be tradable, so that's fun.
Okay, so it's meant to make it difficult to be tradable, but it's possible.
Well, yeah, like the whole point of time locking though is so that, like, you know, if you're somebody who has $100 worth of hex and it turns into $1 million, hopefully you don't sell it all when it got to be $500. And that those aren't random numbers that I'm choosing. Like, there's a guy who follows me on Twitter, the most memed Bitcoiner price dude of all time, Greg Schoen, and he sold his 1,700 Bitcoin on a 5X when it went from 6 cents to 30 cents, and he cashed out his $400 of profit. Whereas, you know, he could have had, you know, $20 million later on.
And so, if I remember that, I've seen that many times. If I remember correctly, it's like the tweet is, and now it's $8 or something along those lines.
Exactly.
You know, and he was, you know, flabbergasted by it at that time. So
yes,
you know,
and I've followed up with Greg in DMs a while back, and he's still working his software job. He never got to retire, even though he picked the right crypto. He didn't hold on to it.
Oh, he didn't stay in it. That's crazy.
And he didn't get back in either.
Wow.
He didn't get back in.
He was selling like NFTs of his tweet. And I mean, it's a perfect story. I was telling him about Hex. I was like, I sent him some Hex for free and stuff. And I'm like, dude, this would have been cool, you know, for you to hold on to some of your crypto back in the day. And Time Pays Me is also designed in the same way to help people save themselves from themselves.
So it's funny you say that. I'm not even sure if the Bitcoin time lock feature was in existence back then when he he probably, I don't know if it was in existence back then, but there is this
I
time.
believe it was. Yeah,
It
yeah.
was? But
Yeah,
no one,
there's like time lock check verify, some like function was written into the early Bitcoin code. It was just never popularized, and there wasn't a front end that supported it.
Well,
basically.
no one saw a real incentive to use it at the time, I suppose. Like when you're holding it, like you just like no one saw the incentive of saving yourself from yourself, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so another question, it takes a 0.1% fee when you lock it up?
Yes. So that's
And
1 out of 1,000 units.
yeah, and so what happens to that?
It goes to the people who created it.
Okay,
You
there's
would
no
imagine.
expectations. Okay, right.
And I wouldn't even describe it as no expectations, because sometimes when people say no expectations, they're alluding to the fact that people have expectations. In this case, like, it's something that
that's your
isn't
payment, essentially.
Yeah. It's like, to the creators, and like,
Right.
that's cool. I mean, this is a third of the cost of a swap. And so in a lot of cases, especially on Ethereum, you're paying more in gas fees than you are to like this fee. And sometimes we wish that we just made it free, but I think there's a little bit of cool game theory in the fact that if you were to do a year lock and then do another year lock and then do another year, you'd be paying 0.3%, right? But if you locked for 3 years, you're only paying 0.1. And so it's like, it's giving us the opportunity to bring up this idea of longer pays better, or like longer doesn't have as much fees, but it's a really low amount. I mean, most people wouldn't notice 0.1 versus 0.3.
Okay, and
I agree.
also,
yeah, quite.
and also the I just noticed. So you have once you come to the end of your time lock period that you stated, you run the function to let it release to you, and there's a 7-day wait period.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering why you put a 7-day wait period in there.
So you can undo a hack.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
So
because you need time. Because if the hacker has
But
your
if you've
primary
seen that's been
secrets,
done, what you can do is, if you've set up an address beforehand that's the backup address, then that address can go in and run a function so that the original address can't get the money out, and then it takes the ownership. Right.
Yep.
So it's basically, okay, that's interesting. So it gives you time to undo that hack if you've not seen it. And
yeah, because they're gonna have to withdraw it if they want to take it from you, and
that's
then they're gonna have to
actually
wait
quite
7
an amazing
days.
feature. That
and
is
you can
really
do
an
things
amazing
like on
feature.
Etherscan, you can basically set up a thing where it sends you a notification if anything happens to a certain wallet. So you'll just get an email, you'll say, holy shit, someone's gotten in somehow, and then you can go and save it from them. Oh, okay.
So
that's right.
I think it's important to specify that that secondary address would actually need to come from a different set of words or seed phrase, rather than being the same seed phrase, because that would defeat the purpose of So that is an amazing feature, and I think. Can you tell me a little bit about this drip feature? Can you withdraw as much time that has passed? Like is that like a pro rata type basis? So let's say you've got 100 pulse for 100 days. You could withdraw 100. You could withdraw 1 pulse per day. So if you do 50 days, you could withdraw 50 pulse. Is that
when you set up the lock in the beginning? You can choose whether you want it to be a hard lock or a drip. By default, it's going to be a drip. And so depending on what your needs are, then just because it's a drip doesn't mean you have to take it out as it goes along. But you can think of it with the 1 week wait period, that there's basically it's a weekly paycheck that's coming out to you for the duration of your lock. And the amount of time that you can lock for can be, anywhere from 1 block or like 1 day. I mean, like a block is much faster than a day, but normally I just say a day to 55 years.
Yeah. So you could do
55
something.
years.
So you could do something like set it up for 10 years and then take out 10% a year.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
I'd like to say I'll be here in 55 years, but I'm dubious.
That's the intergenerational stuff, eh? Yeah.
I will. So I'll be in my early 90s, and I've already locked 1% of my pulse and 1% of my pulse X to drip out for 55 years.
Oh, yeah, right. And do you have to say how, like,
That's awesome.
Can you decide when to take that drip out, or does it just come
Yeah,
out?
so I could take it out weekly, I could take it out monthly, quarterly, yearly, every 5 years. I could take it out, every year and then switch it. It's like every 3 years, like it's just
Okay.
however much time has passed is how much you can request.
Yeah.
And then a week later you get the coins.
Can you do things like can you put an NFT in this contract?
No.
No. So you couldn't like set up a PulseX like liquidity position and put that in there.
You'd have to tokenize it first.
Tokenize what?
Make
it into a token as right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, like the Hex perpetuals are really good matches because you could say
they're a
like,
token. Yeah.
so I actually the crypto professor Lamont Black, when I ran into him at the screening in Chicago, I handed him a physical coin that has it's like a 1 ounce coin that has a private key built into it. And I preloaded it with a time pays me drip of Deci that's dripping out for 30 years. And so that's pretty cool. And I didn't explain it to him all at once because I'm going to do an interview. I'm going to do an interview with him at some point. And
because it just self rolls over. Yeah. Okay.
I didn't want to overwhelm him.
That's a very interesting way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had always really loved the physical coin aspect, but then you can't really put that much value on there because you've got the counterparty risk of the guy who made them. And I know the guy who made them, but still it's not very crypto to go around preaching that, you should use a private key that you haven't generated yourself. Well, time pays me is actually a solution to this because Lamont Black, anytime he chooses in the next 30 years, he could take custody by setting up a second seed phrase. And so he could take custody from the coin that I created. And,
to his own address.
Yeah, then he would know that it's fully under his control.
I'm interested to know. So let's say that situation occurs where you need to take, you get hacked and you need to take custody. So does that backup address become the owner, or do you need to set a new address as the owner?
So this actually happened to me because I promised everybody that I would demo it. And so when we did the second annual Pulse Chain conference a little bit less than a month ago, I released the 12 seed words to my $10,000. I put $5,000 on Ethereum and $5,000 of Pulse Chain into a Time Pays Me vault on their respective chains. And I released the 12 words after I had already set up the second seed phrase. And so that's all I needed in order to make sure I didn't lose the funds, because this wasn't a giveaway. This was a demonstration. And I was showing that because I wasn't sharing the second seed phrase, somebody just having the first seed phrase, that wasn't enough for them to do anything. And the funds actually had to be time locked. They couldn't just be sitting in the smart vault, because somebody could have come in and time locked all my $5,000 on each chain for 55 years. And then that would have been not to my liking. So, you know, we saw David Feeder was like present at the event that I did in Austin, and he, like, I was giving my talk, and he busted out his phone and like put the seed words in and showed everybody like, yeah, there's $10,000 in there. Yeah, there's nothing we can do with it. Sticker guy got in there, and I had left like some dust there, and he like time locked it for 3 years and said sticker guy was here. Future Us also got in there. He's put in his own funds, I don't know, $1 or $2, and locked it. So yeah, people were definitely in there. But yeah, whenever the recovery process occurs, it basically uses up the only extra life that you have, and then it's the way that you interact with it is the exact same way that you interacted with it in the primary seed phrase address. And so all of your drips are still coming out as they would. And so that's pretty normal that like you can see those stakes through all the way. I would recommend, you know, that somebody would migrate any funds that have been compromised in that way, migrate those to like a new instance of Time Pays Me, you know, with your third seed phrase that's backed up by your fourth seed phrase in that case, as the time locks are coming due, so that you always have one extra life.
And Ash has just asked, like, it's not an automatic drip, hey, it's a contract call. So like you can, like, if you have a 10-year, like in the first year, you can just wait a whole year and do it. And then for that second year, you can do 10% or whatever, or you can do whatever percentage it is up to each month or whatever. And then you can go back to waiting a year or whatever. Right.
That's right. Yep. And the gas fees are like, it's not doing the math like Hex does, because the coins aren't being burned. So it's not going to be as expensive, you know, in 10 years. In terms of the gas cost, now the price of Ethereum or the price of Pulse Chain, we don't know. But yeah, like relative to the Hex math being done every day, versus Time Pays Me is not having to do that much computation on chain.
And also, I think Amrinsky's just asked a question. There was supposed to be an EES reward to the stakers type of functionality. I believe it was talked about ages ago. Am I correct to assume it's built in?
I cut that out because I didn't want to copy Hex, and it was because the way that Hex does it is like definitely in the legal framework that you would imagine as somebody who's not a lawyer, but like the way that Hex does it, burning it and then minting it new, it's like that's unique and not an instance of pooling, which like the SEC can get up your ass about. And so even though we could imagine ways to do the it was called the if you took an early payday, basically you could, but you get 10% out early, but you'd have to pay a 1% fee to the people who kept their coins in. There was not a clear way to like send all the funds out all at once to everybody. Like if you pool them, then that's a risk, et cetera, et cetera. So it was just cleaner to do it this way.
It kept it nice and simple.
Yeah,
makes sense. That makes sense. Even from, I would have thought a coding perspective, that would have that. Just
and it's very different because Hex is obviously we're earning interest. So
and you are not earning anything from anyone else or any other entity or party. You are just simply taking back what was yours.
Yeah. You're holding your own coins and you're setting the rules for how fast you can access them.
It's interesting. There could be something in there also for wills. If like someone wants to leave money, but they don't want to give all the money at once to their children or whatever, they could let it have some sort of thing over a longer period of time.
So we did put something in for that. That was on the bucket list. So like there's something called a dead man switch, which is where
Ooh,
you
I like this sort of stuff.
you just got OG 43
You're
wet.
talking my language.
You're talking his language.
So like if you have the second seed phrase set up and then your longest time lock goes a year past due, basically the permission is allowed for the second seed phrase. And so you could proactively set that up to say, I'm going to give, I'm going to make one of these for each of my kids, a separate vault with separate seed phrases. And then I'm going to make yet another seed phrase for each of them. And then basically you can time it out so that, that they would get access in the future, even without you doing anything.
Interesting. That's nice.
That's interesting. Is there documentation on this?
There isn't
yet.
documentation on anything. Barely. I mean, there's a tutorial thread on Twitter. If you go to the Time Pays Me Twitter.
Yeah, I read that, but there was nothing about this stuff in the tutorial.
No, there's not. There's a lot of Easter eggs that haven't been.
There's more Easter eggs. So, is this the first release of that Easter egg? Is it?
So, like, the Easter eggs are just things that already exist in the code that, like, we haven't built into the front end or haven't particularly told everybody about.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna have to get onto OneClick DApp and see what I can bring up, what contract calls I can bring up, just to understand. Is there so there's a contract address? I'm just wondering, where would I find the contract address? Is that something that?
So that's like typically you would find that for something that has a token. In this case, like you would go to the audit if you wanted to see like where the contract was deployed, 3 contracts in particular, and all that, which you can get to from the Time Pays Me Twitter, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, I can see there's a link to Solidity Finance,
which is rebranding themselves as Source Hat.
Yes, because they're reviewing contracts that are more than just Solidity.
Yeah. And also, Anita, we've seen your question, get you talk about how legacy would work, but I don't really know. Maybe the question's a bit general, unless you guys know what she means by that.
Yeah, I saw that question. I didn't quite understand what it meant.
Okay.
So we can move on. Yeah, I think that this is a pretty good idea. I mean, look, as far as the documentation goes, I think you've got plenty of time. You've got plenty of time to come out with it. As people use it, and I think people will be making videos as well. I think I recall a little while back you saying that there was a young man who locked up some stuff. Maybe I saw it on Twitter. There was a young man who locked something up for a bit of time.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the most enthusiastic people to be early to Time Pays Me has been a gentleman on Twitter named Kincaid Honey. And I think I first met him in person. Well, actually, it was probably on the 5555 tour that Abid and Patrick put on. But then he came out to Vegas. And this is somebody who's 19 years old. His life was changed by Hex. I'm not sure how early he was, but he like believes in the long-term vision. He got a chance to do a testimonial video like live with Richard, telling Richard how much Hex has changed his life. And he's become a longevity enthusiast. And so he was the first person that I know of to time lock the maximum duration. I don't think he locked his whole stack, which would be irresponsible, but yeah, Kincaid Honey is he's definitely a Time Pays Me OG now in the past and in the future.
I'm guessing he probably did the drip if he did it for 55 years. Yeah.
Probably. I don't remember though. Be good to
Runesy's
look into.
Yeah, Runesy's just asked again, can NFTs be time locked? We've discussed that and it was no. But I was just thinking, like, because I remember people talking about in the future, what people could do is take an NFT and tokenize it. And I suppose once it's tokenized, you could so you could have like a liquidity position or a Watso or something like that, and you could have that put into tokens, like 10 tokens that represent that NFT, and then you could take one or more of those tokens and time lock this thing. So you could actually time lock a part of a position or even a whole position if you took all of the 10 tokens.
I think you could, yeah.
And that way the money is actually earning something, as opposed to just like, as opposed to just sitting there and not earning anything. I mean, we've got so many staking kind of protocols coming out. It seems, in a way, it seems a little bit of a shame just to lock it up from yourself and not let that money earn something.
Well, that's why you do the Deci or the base or the Lucky. That's the perfect. That is a great one to do. I really like that idea. I hadn't thought of that, mainly because I thought it was only Pulse that you could do. But this idea,
or even Maxi would be the ideal one.
Maxi, yeah.
So Maxi is not a perpetual, so you could only lock that one for like 14 years at this point.
Yeah.
Oh,
because all the other ones auto.
Yeah, it doesn't roll over. Yeah, right.
So that's what makes them
different.
Right.
Yeah.
But
the other side of that, though, is they don't earn Hedron. So in the case that Hedron's worth a ton in 10 years or whatever, like, you'd miss out on that.
I was talking to Dipcatcher today in a DM, just like trying to lay out the need for a 5555 perpetual. Because if you're doing Deci for 30 years, like, sure, it's fine for like a small donation to the crypto professor, but like if you wanted to be serious about that, I think that you would want to have a perpetual that's earning that extra banger compound interest. The difference between a 10-year and a 15-year stake is pretty big.
Well, I mean, they're coming out, and they're coming out with Pool Party, so you could do that yourself, probably.
I thought of that, and I like that they're coming out with Pool Party. I think that you're going to need the liquidity, though, if you want it to be a successful drip.
Yeah.
When you get into a situation where everybody's creating their own 5555 that's tokenized, you would have to have a really efficient marketplace if you wanted to take something from a drip that was different on every platform and everything. So I think that, so that's my main argument as to why I think it would be really cool to get a big group together to, like they did with the other perpetuals.
I suppose you could just do it yourself as well. You could just fork their code and call it something else, eh?
I think it's like better cross promotion if we work together, but we'll see what those guys say. I'm excited about the idea, because something that maybe isn't immediately obvious is like if the price of Hex is really high or really low in 15 years, it might be really hard to like restake for some people. I mean, people are having difficulty restaking now. There's like some people who rebuy their T-shares and some people who don't. But if you can imagine like being able to lock yourself in to rebuy your T-shares after 15 years, that's a cool superpower.
It's quite ironic, hey, because one of the selling points of the perpetuals was that you had them in liquid form, and so you could sell them at any time. But if you do,
and I think it's more rewarding. Like, imagine if a Hex, did what it did, and you had this set up from the beginning. You'd be getting, even if you put in $100, you'd be getting a paycheck's worth of money out every week for a long time from how much Hex has run up. So I think it's I think it's going to be really exciting to see how people use time locking. I mean, you can do this with Ethereum too. That's another thing that is a goal of mine, is to like infiltrate the Ethereum community, like get them excited about this too. Cause I think if you believe in something so much, why wouldn't you prove that you're going to hold on to at least some of it for a certain amount of time? It's like the truth engine of crypto. It's like, well, if you believe in it so much, why don't you time lock it?
I've thought this for like a little while now. There needs to be like an airdrop for only people who have committed to 5555 hex stakes. But can you imagine, like, have you ever thought about like the future of like Time Pays Me, and like 55 years is a long time, right? It's a long time.
You want to be rewarded for that.
No, but can you imagine, like, if there's like, also it sort of gamifies it to some extent as well.
I mean, depending on the price going up, basically, that's the reward. I mean, that's the whole point of incentivizing yourself to lock it up and save yourself against yourself. You're assuming that the price will go up a ton in 15 years or whatever, 55 years.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
And the Maximus pool guys have something like that, where they have an extra contract that you can do, and you get incentives to keep it in there. Well, I forget what it's called now. But they have
The Diamond Hands contract.
Yeah, the Diamond Hands contract.
I think you had to sign up for that like right when it started.
Oh, you can't do that now?
I'm not aware that you can, but I could be wrong.
I'm not sure.
But yeah,
I love
it's
this idea of Maximus doing another perpetual Maximus. I really like that idea. I think it's about time they did another Maximus. Yeah. Because and then when they came out with it originally, I remember there being talk, are they going to do one every year? Are they, what are they going to do? How are they going to do it? And then they came out with all the perpetuals. But I feel like a 15-year perpetual it's on the cards.
What would you call it second time around?
That's a good question.
Maximus.
It's a good question. That's one for the chat.
Yeah. Somebody come up with a good name.
Maybe you can make something about like from the bottom or something, Maximus. Like assume that we're at the bottom now, and so now's like it's 15 years from now could be worth.
Minimus.
You could time it better than the people who paid into it last a couple of years ago.
You could. And then so there's a third function of Time Pays Me that we haven't rolled out yet on the front end, but it's built into the blockchain code. It's been audited. And right, so the first function is being able to time lock any ERC or PRC20 and native. The second feature is being able to undo a hack by setting up a second seed phrase. And the third function, that's the one I've been working on for 7 years, not just 1 year. And that's where you can pay yourself to engage in a healthy behavior. And so, we live our whole lives and we work, for the man or for whatever to accumulate our savings. And if somebody paid you to do something, you might be more motivated to do it than just wanting to do it for yourself. And so this is a new idea. I'm trying to open up a new function of money, because the way that money has been in the past has focused on custody, where either I have a bearer asset, like I have gold or something that like it is, I have the value in my hand, or I have, a paper receipt for something like a fiat dollar. But there's never been a way for you to be able to program money yourself to take your savings and to turn it into a motivating paycheck. And so, whether it's somebody paying them. So like I saw this when I worked for 7 years in a laboratory where we studied people who were quitting smoking tobacco cigarettes. Like we could back, you know, it was 14 years ago now, but like we would pay people $1,000 to quit smoking. And it was always curious to me how rewarding that would be for somebody, but they're spending thousands of dollars smoking anyway. So it's like just having the money yourself doesn't change your behavior. But if somebody else is giving it to you, it does change your behavior. Well, that's what I wanted to bring to this idea of being able to use Time Pays Me to type out any goal that you have. And then basically it's going to generate you a 6-number code. And you would send that to somebody like your doctor or your partner or the homeless guy at the 7-Eleven, right? And you'd write that down on a piece of paper and give it to him. And then that becomes your behavior validator, right? And so they're going to know that you stopped buying cigarettes at the 7-Eleven, right? Because they're
The homeless
there
guy's
all the
always
time.
there. He's always there out the front.
Yeah. And maybe you set your goal for quitting for 3 months. And so after 3 months, he can give you the 6 numbers back. And then you can plug that into Time Pays Me and your funds are immediately available to do the 7-day withdraw and wait, or you can immediately use them to create a new behavior goal. Now, what happens if the guy from the 7-Eleven disappears? Maybe he gets a home.
That's
right?
my question.
Gets a home.
Sure. It's understandable. So if anything goes wrong, like you write down the numbers wrong, or the person that you're counting on as your behavior validator, like doesn't come through,
or they divorce you. And like,
that's right. That's right. So the lock, the behavior lock only goes for a year. And so after a year has passed, the smart contract will say, it doesn't matter if you have the 6 numbers or not, you can withdraw the funds. So let's imagine that you're using this like dirty fiat that you have in like USDC or DAI. For me, that would motivate me more to like change my behavior, because I know that that shit's going to get eaten up by inflation after a whole year has passed, right? So there's like a little bit extra motivator there. Whereas maybe if I'm, you know, buying into Pulse or Deci or whatever it is, whatever I like today, maybe it's Ethereum, I can use that as my behavior motivator. And maybe we get into a bull run and maybe I get a 10x on my motivation because my crypto is 10x and I can't access it until I change my behavior or I cheat.
Psychologically, what do you think the difference is between getting paid to not do something and getting paid to do something? Like, yeah, what do you think the difference is there?
Yeah, I mean, like these questions of behavior change are like particularly interesting to me. And we know so there's a whole field of psychology, a subfield called contingency management. So Time Pays Me is the first instance of contingency management on the blockchain in crypto. And contingency management is where they're studying paying people to change their behaviors. In terms of people like being more motivated, you know, to stop a behavior versus starting a behavior. From my work as a therapist, helping people quit drugs, I know that whenever you stop something, there's another behavior you kind of have to start. You know, whether it's you know, even if you're avoiding triggers, you have to be somewhere in space and time. So you know, people, there is often a behavior. Now, something I found particularly interesting, my girlfriend has a PhD in you know, in behavioral psychology, and so she's really familiar with the theoretical and the research side of all this. And it's like, apparently people will work harder to avoid losing than they will to gain something. And so I think Time Pays Me kind of fits into that psychology, but it's in some ways it's based on how you frame it.
That really explains why we've started streaming more on this channel now that the price of Hex is so low.
Yeah, it's going down.
I've got a question just in relation to the smoking. I was in Italy for a few months, and while I was in Italy, I started smoking. Now, I smoked when I was quite young for here and there, but I was never like a regular smoker. But when I was in Italy, because I was around it so much, and because there was always coffee, and it was just like there were people around me smoking.
You're in Italy.
Yeah, I just started smoking, and then I had to smoke. It's like I guess I got addicted. But when I came back to Australia, I like finished off the rest of the packet that I had. I just smoke one every night. So I went down to one a day until I finished the packet. And then when I finished the packet, that was it. Like I just stopped, just basically cold turkey. And what you were saying about replacing it, I would like when I would have this cigarette, I'd sit on my on the steps of out the front of my place, and I'd have that cigarette in the evening after the kids were in bed, and then I replaced that with eating a tub of I replaced it with eating a tub of yogurt, tub of Greek yogurt every night, and so like, and that worked. And it's funny, like, is it that different people have different, like their brains work differently or different connections? Because some people find that very hard, and I know for a fact that there are people that I know that find that method like very easy. You just cold turkey is the only way to go. How does that, like,
So,
can you maybe explain that? Give me some context.
I could talk for too long about this. Let me see if I can summarize it. So basically, there was a long time where when scientists were studying people quitting smoking, they would only study people who found it easy to quit smoking, because they'd be like, oh, 70% of people dropped out of the study, whatever. Like, and they don't even like report that or think it's significant. And so you're literally, for much of, like modern times, the only scientists that were studying quitting smoking were studying like the 30% of people who found it the easiest to quit smoking, which is why you saw this like huge reversal happen when one of my mentors and others like discovered this methodological flaw of like, you're not retaining people. So you're not studying the real thing.
Were they
And so
funded
you
by the
saw-
cigarette companies? Being funded
you
by the
saw
cigarette
the,
companies?
Well, so I had dinner with the guy who invented the nicotine patch, Jed Rose from North Carolina, and yeah, he was paid off. Like, he sold the patent to the tobacco companies. He became probably a billionaire from, or at least 100 millionaire from that. And yeah, then the tobacco companies mistrained doctors on how to prescribe the patch. They would, in America, they give it to people when they're getting surgery. And so people associate it with like pain from surgery. And it's just like in every single which way, like doctors don't give you the right dose. So you get too much or too little, and then you think it doesn't work. It's like a huge psyop. But, to go to your point, yeah, they're like so there are a lot of individual differences. Some people have different serotonin transporter alleles, like too shorts or too longs, that make nicotine more or less rewarding. But even the whole story on like why nicotine works, a lot of people think it's something inside of them. Some of our research showed that it was actually your environment, and how, like, if you're working third shift, you're going to smoke more. You're going to be more disposed to smoking because nicotine helps. There's a reason why 2 billion people on earth smoke. It's because nicotine is helpful.
It's a cognitive benefit, I found.
Yes. Yes. It helps with depression, ADHD, anxiety, stress in general. So there's all these benefits, emotional regulation, just all kinds of stuff. But tobacco smoke damages the lungs. And so, yeah, it's like, I think it tells us a lot about human behavior when we're studying something like smoking that was like so poorly characterized that they weren't even studying the right people. And then we get to see, yeah, if you give somebody a nicotine patch or a placebo patch, like they are going to act way different, even if you bring the same person back multiple days, and they're going to act different. And so that gives you a lot of insight into why people smoke, and how to help people quit smoking is by giving them a patch and paying them.
Have you ever thought about like all of this energy you're putting in, like in terms of studying and also the things that you're designing, are kind of all engaged in either controlling people or like let's say empowering people to control themselves? Like, have you ever like questioned like that as a kind of motivator? Like to try, like it's kind of like life to me is like this thing which is uncontrollable, and to an extent we just have to like go into it and just be in the present and just let it unfold in front of us. And like relinquishing control, I've found, is a very like beautiful way to be. But I also totally get how like a lot of people want more control over their lives, and how that can be empowering as well. Have you kind of thought about that much?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, yeah, in like certain terms, first of all, it's like, is it ethical to even, like if Time Pays Me wasn't written and designed the way that it was, I would have concerns about people going out there talking about a tool to pay yourself to change your behavior. I mean, it sounds bad if you're not the one in control of it. And when you talk about control in general, I think some people, based on what they've been through, based on their experiences of like, good experiences with letting go of control versus bad experiences of letting go of control, I think that's an area where people are very different. This idea, though, that like I could hold on to something and not sell it, that's unique to programmable money. The idea that I could use wrapped Bitcoin to wake myself up in the morning. What does Richard always say? I went back and looked on hexsearch.io, which, by the way, was made by Time Pays Me. The second developer, other than Future Us, is Chris, and he made hexsearch.io.
Respect
Shout
to
out to
Chris.
him.
Yeah,
Shout out
total
to him.
man. That's a
That's
great tool.
awesome. I use
Yeah.
that all the time.
If you look, Richard has said all the time, Bitcoin never lived up to being programmable money because you can't program it to wake yourself up in the morning. So at Time Pays Me, you can use Bitcoin to wake yourself up in the morning. You just need to make sure that guy at the 7-Eleven sticks around.
Yeah.
Or you find out where he moves once he gets at home.
I'm not sold on this 7-Eleven guy. I love it. I love it.
I like that after a year it clocks off and goes back, so you can't really stuff yourself up, kind of thing.
Yeah, like, and you're not going to get wrecked on capital gains if you did. It's a different tax treatment here after a year. Then like the one other thing that I'll point out though about like people motivating their own behavior change. This is something you're going to see my story. I'm going to start to like make public certain goals of behavior I want to change, and just try to give people examples.
Social pressure, hey? Yeah.
Yeah.
Social pressure
Well,
is actually probably the strongest motivator of change.
That's actually where I was going with this. So people who are already rich, like, Richard or anybody you can think of that is already rich and already understands crypto, like the thing that might motivate them even more than money is going to be the putting their reputation on the line, and the idea that they could be helping others by promoting the idea of them changing some behavior with Time Pays Me. So This part of the front end, it's on private testnet right now, and so it'll be coming soon to mainnet. And but well, I mean, it's already on mainnet. It's just not on the front end yet.
Nice. Hey, just also, I don't know if you guys, we're probably going to be ending up soon. I just wanted to say, I don't know if you guys, well, you probably did. Of course you did. You saw the tweets that Richard has been tweeting in the last 24 hours. And it's just so nice to see him like fired up. And I think we're going to be entering a very interesting time with this court case.
And Chat GPT. I mean, is it me?
I mean, to me, that's just a glorified search engine, to be honest. It's just more algorithms.
But it seemed to me that like that's.
No, have you seen his other tweets that he's been tweeting?
Yeah, there was like a lot of them. It was like in quick succession. It was like bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
I thought that they were like maybe generated with AI somewhat.
So I think that the tweets that Richard made surrounding like US law that he was quoting about privacy, it's basically talking about privacy and free speech on the internet. And so I read through that right before we got on stream because I thought it might come up. And basically, I think it has to do with the Tornado Cash situation that's been developing today and yesterday, to where these two guys who were the developers and creators, they got in super big trouble. They got sanctioned. They got arrested by the
Still
FBI.
in jail, the guy. Yeah. He's still being held there.
And there was like there was a very weird argument that was made, I want to say, by the government, whether it was the DOJ or the OFAC.
All of that's that's all European courts. That's all in the Dutch courts. That's nothing to do with the US courts. So what Richard
I think they got taken into US custody today.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's been developments today in the Tornado Cash story. Yeah. And the strangest legal argument that I saw presented today was this idea that a smart contract is like a vending machine, and that these guys, they didn't stop promoting their smart contract whenever North Korea decided to launder $500 million through it. And I don't know if they were just paying like their web hosting bill or if they were actively shilling Tornado Cash. I know Tornado Cash even had a major airdrop at one point. But this idea that like the computer code is like a vending machine, I think is probably very inaccurate. And I think that some of the case law that Richard pointed to today might have been in regards to that. Although I'm not a legal expert, and you should do your own research.
I think I'm on the same page as you, Maddie, when it comes to that. I read through them, and I think that it was all in relation to, because they were very specific points that these tweets were making, I thought
it was the basis of his defense. That's where he's going with his defense.
I think it all ends up in the same place, that code is free speech. I think that's.
You think he could have been talking about both of those things? Yeah, potentially, I suppose.
I think it all ends up in the same place. Code is free speech. If you're a developer and you're developing code that's going to sit on a blockchain, then that's just free speech. And I think there are examples in those tweets of like there are examples from the actual cases in
Supreme Court.
Yeah, Supreme Court. When so yeah. I mean, I agree. That's what it all was in relation to. We're coming into interesting times because I think the powers that be are going to try and set precedents, because this is a new area that we're in, or they're going to try and frame it as if this is a new thing, when in actual fact we know that from this case law that this is already
precedents have already been set very clearly.
They've already been set, but they're going to try and make It's almost like it. Do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of when I talk to my accountant in relation to crypto taxes. And they're like, it's A, B, C, D. And I'm like, yes, but the actual law doesn't say anything about A, B, C, D. And this is just maths being posted to the internet, right? So really, shouldn't it just be when you cash out? I never win that argument with my accountant, by the way. He always wins that argument. And I haven't got the pockets to,
up against the ATO. Take the ATO to court about it.
The ATO are very litigious. They don't suffer. They're probably one of the most. People think the IRS is bad. The Australian ATO, they don't mess around.
Mind you, the IRS hired 87,000 people just recently, and they're giving them gun training, and one of them just killed another person in training, like an accident. Like, I don't know what they're not going to be doing blockchain analysis if they're training them on guns, are they? What are they going to get those guys to do? It's crazy.
That sounds ridiculous. Now there is one other area of alpha that I have for you guys tonight, if you want to go there.
Let's finish up on this because we've been going for an hour.
Sure.
And let's get this alpha, Maddie.
So like there's this new platform.
Did he just rug?
Are you there, Maddie? And I'm going to, Maddie.
He's back. He's back.
No, you're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
We got up to, there's a new platform.
Yeah. Friend.tech that's been flying around. And I did an episode about it last night. But there's been some like new concerns that came to my attention today. And these are things that people can look into for yourself. But basically, I don't think that the Coinbase blockchain is a real blockchain. I think that they only have one node that is I think that they only have one basically validator is what we would call it. And there's I'm trying to remember what the name for it is, but there's a name when you take something out of a roll up, because they're basically calling it a layer 2 on Ethereum, this Coinbase quote unquote base chain. And that's what friend.tech is built on top of. And so to make a long story short, basically, if you create something really addictive where you're gambling on your friend's Twitter handle ownership or like private group chats, and then you like tell people and you have people sending in Ethereum to like some place that ends up being Coinbase, and you might get and it's like EVM compatible, so you can fork all your favorite projects over there. You might get the feeling that this is real crypto, but I'm very concerned that it's actually not real crypto, because real crypto, you could fork away from Coinbase. And in this case, it looks like there may not be a way to do that, that the translator mechanism that unrolls what's been written onto the Ethereum blockchain isn't open source, and there's no way to make it open source, and there's no incentive for people to run their own validators for this. And so, yeah, again, to like make a long story short, I think that my initial enthusiasm for friend.tech has been blunted. And I think that the more that I learn about it from a technical standpoint, I will still be very interested to study how popular it becomes and for me to understand how it works. But I worry that it will give people an impression that they're using crypto and they're really not. Like kind of FTX, like that wasn't real crypto because it was controlled by a middleman. And so that's my new understanding.
Can we steal it from Pulse Chain? Can we steal friends.tech for Pulse Chain?
Dipcatcher is interested in forking it.
There's also the case that about 100,000 people's friend.tech identities was leaked, and so it linked the address that they sent the ETH from to that person. And so that's basically linking an Ethereum address to your Twitter handle. So if you are going to use Friendtech, I'd first go through like Houdini Swap or Bridge, something like that, and where you hide, so you just get into a fresh wallet and send it from there, so that
always,
they can't track you back.
I think that that it was just scraping public data, and it was described as a leak when it really wasn't. But in some ways it was a leak because it was pairing those two things. And we don't have there's no privacy policy on friend.tech. And so it's not a good situation.
Yeah. And that's the public it's got a link to your Twitter thing. So that's how if you verified on Twitter and all of that, then you've had to have given a phone number and if you've paid for verification, a credit card. So
yeah. User beware.
That's right.
Know where you're public and you're private, and the differences between those two things are.
And it really shows us that like Pulse Chain is more valuable than ever, in the sense that it's sticking to true DeFi. There's 500 people who are running validators. They're running 30,000 validators or whatever it is. But that's way different than Coinbase only having one mechanism to decode what they're wrapping on or what they're rolling into the Ethereum main chain. So don't forget what real crypto is.
Yeah, I mean they can manipulate it. They can roll back the chain essentially if they want to, and no one could stop.
Oh, censorship galore! Definitely, yeah.
That could change it. Yeah.
Pulse Chain for the win. Maddie, thank you so much for coming on and explaining Time Pays Me to us.
My pleasure.
And also, I just want to say thank you for everything that you do in the community. Like you occupy a lot of bandwidth in this community from all the streams that you do, and also the conferences that you put on, and the time and effort that all of that must take. I really appreciate what you do for the community, and just want to say thank you.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. I really have enjoyed talking to you guys, and look forward to talking more in the future.
Yeah, it's been great, Maddie. Awesome. Thanks a lot for coming on, and cheers.
Awesome. And thanks to everyone in the chat. We'll see you next week on Not Hex.